Hello upgraders and welcome to the Upgraded Ape Show. I'm your host Will Barron, and on today's show we have Neil Thanedar of LabDoor.com. Neil joins me on today's show to answer the question, do your supplements contain what the label suggests they do? And the results are surprising. We discuss the issues with buying probiotics from shops, the massive variances in quality of fish oils, which is important because that's something that I really do recommend for most people as a first line supplement when we're looking at brain health. I jump straight in and ask the question, what's the weirdest or most random ingredient that you've found in a product that wasn't on the label? And Neil tells us more about what LabDoor tests, why they test it, and their bigger vision for improving the quality of supplements in the market. So without further ado, let's get on with the show.
Welcome to the Upgraded Ape Show, your daily dose of brain upgrades to help you kick life's ass. And here's your host, Will Barron.
Hi Neil, and welcome to the Upgraded Ape Show.
Thanks for having me.
You are more than welcome. Can you just give us a bit of an intro to LabDoor to get us started, and we'll learn about you, what you do, and then we'll dive into some quick-fire questions later on.
Sure. So what LabDoor does is we provide a platform for consumers to research, find, and buy the best supplements. And behind the scenes, what we're doing is we're actually buying these products just like a consumer would, taking them into a chemistry or microbiology lab and actually testing the purity and potency of the products before any of them are available for sale.
That's awesome. And this is going to really resonate with our audience because our audience are clued up and they want the best out of the products. Supplement labeling can be a bit wishy-washy on occasion. And let's dive into that first. What supplements do you test and how do you choose which brands to go for?
So we start by choosing one category each month. So this month we're about to finish the testing of creatine, and then next month we're getting ready to test prenatal vitamins. And there's actually a wide range of categories that we could test, largely because our audience is so diverse. And so what we do is we actually just put it up to a vote of our users every month, and whatever they pick is what we test. And from there, what we'll do is we'll actually go and find the best-selling products in that category, anywhere from 25 to 50 products in that category to get a representative sample of what we think should be the best product.
Ah, that's awesome. That's a really good way to go about it as well. So you're always working on user feedback, essentially.
Yes, and what it does, it becomes a really great feedback loop, right? So if we can continuously just give the exact results that we need, often it builds pairings. So people come and visit LabDoor because they're very excited about our protein rankings, but that leads them into thinking that they would love to have LabDoor for creatine, right? And that's when they start voting. And what we actually find that's just amazing is that the wide range of things that get asked for from us actually extends well beyond supplements, and is something where in the next year we really expect to stick with supplements, but we actually plan to continue forward. We get constant requests about cosmetics testing. Could there be a LabDoor for household products? Could there be a LabDoor for over-the-counter medications? And we're just so excited about all of those possibilities.
Yeah, that sounds amazing because they're the kind of things that you're going to pay more attention to supplements and things that you're physically putting in your body. But with things like cosmetics, household products, you look at them from a health perspective and what you're putting on your skin and the chemicals involved.
Sure. And we talk about this a lot, the idea of there's just three types of products in the world, right? So we talk about search products, experience products, and credence products. So search products are you can see the product, the specifications, you know exactly what it is. And something like Amazon is great for that. You're buying a new hard drive, you just look, all you need is the specifications and you can buy. The kind of classic sites do a really good job of that. The next thing is experience goods. So you need to try it to know that it's good or bad. So these are movies and restaurants and wine and things like that. And those things are great for user reviews. So if you have a Yelp or an Open Table or any of those types of sites, user reviews are perfect to solve that problem. But there's a third group of products, and supplements falls directly into this group, and they're called credence goods. And these are products that even after you try them, you may not have any idea whether they worked until 20 years from now when your doctor says, "Thank you for taking fish oil this whole time." And that's what our job is for those products that you have no ideas until many, many years later. And maybe that's the anti-aging cream, or maybe that's the shampoo that you're worried has a carcinogenic preservative. All of those types of products that you wouldn't necessarily know whether it worked or didn't work or was safe or unsafe. for 20, 30 years. Those are the things that we need to test now and tell you that information so that you don't have to wait and see for yourself.
That is awesome. That's a really good way of splitting the free that I've not come across before as well. Well, before we dive into what people will find interesting, which is, what is actually in the products and what is in that is advertised and what is in them that isn't advertised. And maybe you can, or I know you're totally independent from the manufacturers which you test the products of, so you can name brand names if you like, or you can name and shame, or you don't have to if you don't like. But before that, can we just dive into why LabDoor was created in the first place? Did you guys have issues with supplements that didn't live up to the hype or you knew were dodgy? Or was it just like a kind of gut feeling that people would resonate with this and would want to know this information? What made you start in the first place?
So I actually came at it not actually as much from a consumer perspective, but more from the industry side. So my first company out of college was actually a analytical chemistry lab, where we started by specializing really deeply in pharmaceutical quality control. And what we found from that is the FDA has very strict processes with pharmaceuticals. On a batch-to-batch level, we're testing products. We had stability chambers where we could figure out expiration dates. We were looking for all types of different variances. And that part of it, what people kept coming to us and saying, maybe there was an energy drink manufacturer, a cosmetics manufacturer, a supplement manufacturer. They would come to me and say, could you put my product, or better yet, my competitor's product, against that strict standard? And what all bad things would you find in that situation? And so we would do that. And so we would buy every energy drink off the aisle and test all of them, or we would buy every protein powder and say, your product is 5th out of 10, and if you really wanted to be number 1, you could make these 5 changes. But what I kept finding was that's not what they were looking for. They were looking for an easy answer. A lot of the manufacturers were looking for, can I add 1 or 2 more things to make the nutrition label look a little nicer, or how do I boost the protein a couple grams? Or even, how can I make sure that my competitor gets in trouble for their mistakes in their product? And so what I really wished was that there'd be someone who just goes in and tests everything. And then because they are not connected to the manufacturer and they're funded by the consumer, they can publish names, they can go to the press and say exactly which products are bad. They could participate as a witness in lawsuits potentially against these companies, right? All of these types of things could be very powerful if we could find a way to fund the company through consumers' work.
That's awesome. And I've got to ask, and this may come on to later on as well, but have you had much kickback from the manufacturers? Have you come across a product that's been absolutely shocking and poor, and have they come back and got in contact with you directly and tried to talk you around, I guess?
So what we actually found is there's kind of 2 groups of people that could be unhappy. So there's a group of manufacturers that would be unhappy, but actually need LabDoor. And what we actually noticed was that there are way more companies that actually don't manufacture their own products than we expected. So there's a lot of these companies are actually white labeling their products. And so when they get the results from LabDoor, they're just as shocked as the consumer are, because they actually thought they were buying something of high quality. And when we actually did our multivitamins analysis, 3 different manufacturers called us and said, we need your actual full lab results and a certificate of analysis, because I need to go to my contract manufacturer and fight them or sue them or do something to make sure that they reformulate and give me the product that I paid for. And so in some of these cases, even the manufacturer was just shocked and wanting to fight the manufacturer themselves.
I bet. And I guess that's a much better approach than trying to come at you and trying to attack you and shut you down.
Yeah. We do every once in a while get the kind of angry email or angry call. And in most cases, the easiest thing to do is just open our books. And so what we'll do is if sodium levels are 5 times normal, and that's something that people have been complaining about, what we'll say is, okay, we'll show you our lab results. Things like a sodium test are not going to be wrong, right? These are very accurate tests. So either it's a bad batch or it was actually a consistent problem. And in either case, those manufacturers really need to jump in and take care of it. And so we get calls. We'll talk to the heads of R&D, heads of product quality at a lot of these companies, and actually do our best to tell them exactly what it would take to do better.
Okay. And now this is the question I've been dying to ask. What's the weirdest or biggest not lie, but mislabel, misrepresentation that you've come across so far?
So the most dramatic results are always in herbal supplements. So what you'll actually end up finding, most people are worried that herbal supplements are just have nothing in them. They're total placebos. And in some cases, that's true. But in many cases, the danger is actually that the herbal supplements have something hidden in them, especially international sources, Brazil, India, China, Mexico. We've been seeing a lot of products that will have Viagra or Xanax, but the kind of the cheap generic equivalent just snuck into the product, and the product does whatever they said it was supposed to do. If they thought it was supposed to be a sexual enhancement product or a weight loss product or a relaxation product, it actually works, but it works because it has real pharmaceuticals in it and real untested, unproven pharmaceuticals, and that's something that where the FDA actually absolutely needs to step in, and whenever possible, when we find results like that, we will actually pass it on to them.
And where does the FDA lie in all this? So if you're importing something from another country, do the FDA then have the right to seize it if they know it's not right? No, from the consumer's point of view, where does the FDA stand in it all?
So they treat supplements a lot like they treat food, right? So if you look at a pharmaceutical, the burden of proof, right, it's guilty until proven innocent. And food and supplements is the opposite, right? And so because of that, if before the FDA steps in and fixes salmonella outbreak in tomato, 100 people have to go to the hospital, which means maybe 10,000 people got sick but stayed home. And so they're a very lagging indicator of product quality. And so what we really wanted to do is be the opposite, really be a leading indicator of what is and is not going right in the industry. And so and this is something that's very important for consumers, is the process of actually reporting one of those adverse events is really messy. It's one of an old website. It's really hard to go through the FDA themselves. There's a lot of hoops that you have to jump through. The alternative is going to the manufacturer, but you're going to get stuck in a customer complaint department. They're going to want you to send the product in. They're going to want to test it. They're going to want to tell you that it was okay, and they just want to send you a refund. And so those are kind of the existing paths right now if something goes wrong. And so what we're working on, and we're telling consumers that if you find a product that's the wrong color or the wrong smell, or it created an effect that you were not used to, save that product, but really come and talk to us, and we'll help you find, if the manufacturer is the right route to talk to, then we'll find you that person. But we'll also help you make sure that you actually report this, so that we get to the critical mass where the FDA actually steps in on products that actually have a problem, and they do so faster.
That's awesome. And just out of interest, is there a specific number of complaints that the FDA need, or does it depend on like severity and other multipliers?
It definitely has to do with severity, and it also has to do with actually interest. And that's something that is somewhat odd to me, is that if there's never actually a media story about it, or if there's never a big hoopla about it, sometimes it'll go unnoticed for a long time. One of the things, so like Airborne is a really great example. So Airborne, you remember those effervescent pills that were supposed to keep you from getting sick?
Uh-huh.
They've been out. They launched, I want to say 16 years ago, and they always made these claims that you could just take it. It's like invented by a first grade teacher. She never gets sick in school anymore. And they advertised for 14 years with those claims. FDA pulled that. Finally, FTC stepped in and shut them down 2 years ago. So they actually were able to sell their product for 14 years with really no major complaints, until finally the government was able to step in. And then a year later, Airborne just reformulated, changed their label claims a little bit, and they're back on the market.
Wow, really? Well, I know something similar has happened with Red Bull, hasn't it? Haven't they been sued so many million recently?
And so we've tested Red Bull, we've tested a lot of these products, and one of the things that's just shocking to us is how potent the energy shots are compared to the energy drinks. And so we were looking at a lot of these popular shots will actually have 200 or more milligrams of caffeine in a single 2-ounce shot, and no one really knows that. And so because of that, you may think, I can take, I have a 10-hour workday, or I have a 15-hour workday. I need 3 of these shots, right? That's 600 milligrams of caffeine. That you're looking at now 8 standard Red Bull cans.
And to put this into perspective, is there a limit of what someone can physically put in a drink, or can these numbers just go up and up and up as kind of vanity marketing claims?
So we saw in protein especially there's almost no, we have our own quality scores. So we have a really 0 to 1,000 score on how good or bad a product is. And we find basically no significant correlation between that quality score and price. But we do find a correlation between the protein content listed on the label and price. And so what we're finding is that what that seems to indicate to us is that consumers are actually trying to do a little bit of research and trying to make a smart decision. And they're really going and checking the nutrition label and saying, okay, this is a better product because it says it has more protein. The really tough part about it and the really dangerous part is that the information they're using to do that research is not true. And so what's really tough is I think a lot of times I think people in business, people in retail don't give consumers enough credit, right? Consumers want to do that work. They're willing to take the 5 or 10 minutes in the store to do their research. They're willing to spend hours at home doing their research. Just give them the right information and they can make the right call.
For sure. And I think as people become more and more educated, they want to do that because it's fun and enjoyable to kind of get rid of all the crap and find that premium product. And then even if it is a premium product, they then understand why it is so, and that makes the value added to it, more legible. Something I do want to ask though is your scoring system. Do you take into account what it says on the label versus your lab results, or do you take into account artificial sweeteners, whether that gives it a plus or minus, or whether protein's grass-fed? Do you take things like that into account?
We do now. We started by just looking at purity and label accuracy. Those were our two starting points. And we said, if we can figure out that everything that is supposed to be in the product is in there and that nothing else is there, then that's a good baseline for us. And so that's what we did basically for the first year. And in our second year, we've really started expanding to say, now that you've hit your label claims, there's a big difference between a product that has 400 milligrams of EPA versus one that has 100, even if both hit their label claims. And so we're looking at how much EPA is actually recommended for the average healthy adult, and how can they get that, and what's the best source, and what's the breakdown between EPA and DHA. With protein, we're doing something similar as well. We started by just looking at overall protein content, but now we're looking at how do we go through and make sure that that's actually bound full protein, and what source is it coming from. So what we'll do now is, instead of just testing protein content, we'll test every individual amino acid and actually build an amino acid profile. So now we can actually say this product, based on our testing standards of soy protein isolate versus whey protein isolate versus milk protein concentrate, et cetera, what does the expected breakdown look like, right? So can we actually predict what sources of protein were actually used here, so that when someone shows whey protein isolate as the first ingredient on their product, is that 90% of the formulation? Is it 80%? Is it 20%? Where does that product impact you? And so that's what we want to figure out, how close to the perfect projected efficacy can we get to?
Awesome stuff. Well, that leads me on to my next question, and that is narrowing down just to a specific product so we can get into it a bit deeper. And I know you've done work with different fish oils.
Yes.
Are all fish oils the same? Is a fish oil that says it has so much EPA and there's another product that says it's got similar amounts, are they equivalent regardless of price, or is there more to it than that?
So we've just a huge variation in the fish oil. So we found products, actually at least over 10 of the 50 products we tested had were well under half of the DHA claims that they had made. And that is just, especially with products, DHA is usually harder to get from a supplement than EPA is. So for products to miss that poorly is really, to us, was really indicative of either it's really hard to get the quantities and really meet label claims, or that it's just something that no one expects to actually be checked.
Uh-huh. Can that value go down over time? I don't know, the chemistry of it depreciate, or are they just bottling that or potentially knowing that it's just wrong, it's just a complete lie? So
with fish oil, it's more likely that it's built in and wrong. Because what we can find out is actually, the simpler the formulation is in general, the higher the grades are on LabDoor overall on the industry. So if you look at our vitamin D rankings, vitamin D is very simple. It's stable. You're going to press it into a dry capsule, has long shelf life. You see 17 of our 20 products are A products that we've tested so far. Something like fish oil, where we have oxidation concerns, which we're testing for. You have mercury and PCB levels. You've got EPA, DHA. You see a much fewer, maybe as low as 10% in some cases, are an A grade product. And the thing that we'd find that's the hardest industry to really do well is probiotics. That's something that we even have manufacturers call us and say, we know that we have variations. We have major variations in our probiotics. We just haven't found a shelf stable product yet, and we've done our best to basically just record that as is. But what we're going to do now is actually start testing probiotics more often. Start testing fish oil more often. The things that are more high risk categories need to be tested more often than, say, a multivitamin, which we test every 12 months just to make sure that the formulation hasn't changed.
And what's the issue with probiotics? Is it literally that it's just a live bacteria, so the shelf life is variable? Or is there more to it than that?
It's more variable, but then storage conditions are such an important part. And what you think, we do this in our tests, is we don't actually get these products from the manufacturers. And so a lot of the quality control departments, if you looked at a lot of those 3-letter certifications in a circle that you've seen on products before, a lot of those times, this is manufacturer sponsored. The manufacturer gets to perfectly temperature control the package that they're sending. They take the best product off the shelf and send it, or right off the assembly line even. But what we buy is the same way consumers buy. Maybe you're buying from Amazon, and the fish oil or the probiotics is coming from their Phoenix warehouse, right, where temperatures can get to 120 degrees, right? These types of things are very important, and you can absolutely not expect refrigerated conditions that you might need for a probiotic, right? Things like that. And we've started to look at that. Is how can we, even at a small level, is that something that we should actually get into? And a lot of consumers are really asking for that. That we know that we're going to just buy whatever is number one on LabDoor. Is there a way for you to actually get those from independent distributors, really go through the effort of making optimal storage conditions and just ship it to us every month? And that's something we're testing right now.
That's awesome. That is literally what I was just about to ask you before we dive into some quick fire questions and learn more about you, Neil, is there any specific tips you can give to people who are buying supplements? Should they buy it online? Should they buy it through a local retailer? Should they be buying specifically from the manufacturer, thinking that might reduce the amount of storage time? Are there any tips you can give the audience?
So we're working to solve this, but I think one of the keys will be to find a retailer that actually takes all of this seriously. So takes storage conditions seriously, understands which supplements need to be taken care of in which ways. And that's something that we're setting up right now. So what we call our LabDoor One is actually just a subscription program where you can go in and we send you every month whatever is number one. And so just labdoor.com/one. But what you would basically be able to do is build together. Every month we're testing new fish oil, new protein. So whatever is the best, we'll just tweak those boxes a little bit and make sure that the best branded supplements come to you.
That's awesome. That sounds like a really epic service that will hopefully do really well for you. Neil, let's learn a bit more about yourself through some quickfire questions. You cool with that?
Sure, let's do it.
If you could choose one place on earth to live the rest of your life, where would it be?
I absolutely love San Francisco. I'm living here right now. I think the only thing that may change my mind is probably my hometown of St. Louis, Missouri. I loved being in St. Louis. I've always had the dream of kind of going back, really helping kind of build a new kind of technology, industrial, scientific hub there in St. Louis. I think the folks out of Square and Twitter who are from St. Louis have done an amazing job so far, really building up the city. But would love to really contribute to that.
So you in San Francisco for the tech scene primarily then?
Yes, and so we do our science a little bit south of here, but our full technology team is in San Francisco.
That's awesome. If you could give anyone a hug, who would it be?
I have no idea. I don't know what the. I'm trying to decide who's having a rough day. I haven't seen. I don't know. Maybe not a person. I got to get home and see my dogs tonight. I'd see probably my 2 dogs.
Nice. What time did you get up this morning?
6:15.
What is one book that you could recommend to the Upgraded Ape audience?
I'm reading Conscious Capitalism by John Mackey, the CEO of Whole Foods right now. And really just is sucking me into this concept of really what we built LabDoor with a lot of his principles in mind without actually having read his book or having read his information. But his idea is basically, if you can think long term enough, capitalism can be really great for a society. And so this is what we have debates about this all the time with my friends. But I think one thing we really thought about is LabDoor is like that in many ways, right? Is if we do everything right, we'll change the industry, and it'll hurt some companies, but I actually think the industry on a whole will be stronger, right? We'll actually focus people on the 70-80% of products that are actually quite good. And I think that's something that is a very worthy goal. Yeah, I think maybe 30-40% of brands may not exist in 10 years if LabDoor does everything it's supposed to do. But I think the ones that are there will actually be stronger. And we've seen that in almost every industry. So if you look at even a wine industry, when a retailer goes in and puts all the numbers, those Wine Spectator scores on the rankings, what they actually find is the average store will increase their sales 25%, because you'll decrease the sales of the bad stuff a little bit, but then you'll go buy 2 or 3 bottles of the good stuff because you actually know what's good. And so the same concept for us is really kind of holds true, where short term, right? You come in, you're disruptive with a company, may hurt sales, may cause people to be more afraid of supplements, more skeptical, right? There's going to be big news stories we'll help break news stories about how many supplements aren't what you see. But for the rest of the industry, over the long term, you can really we can make a great business out of it. We can help consumers, and the industry can be really benefited by having the bad players that really cause skepticism in the industry weeded out.
That's awesome. Yeah, and it's great that you've got a big picture as well, because that really will drive your business to not be chasing the money so much, but like chasing an end goal, which is going to be disruptive, which is what's needed, and have that impact, it sounds great.
Absolutely. I think that's the thing. If we can really see products getting better, if we can see more A grades next year than this year, if we can see fewer products with spiked amino content in protein supplements, those things we want to see that those numbers go in the right direction, because that's something we can directly take credit for and say, that's a $5 billion protein industry, and lawsuits have gone down 80% in the last year, right? That's the kind of stuff that we would absolutely just be thrilled. Those are our numbers. For sure. Well, Neil, I've got one last question for you, and it's something I've asked everyone who's come on the show so far. If you could go back in time and speak to your younger self, what would be one piece of advice you'd give him to help either upgrade his brain, help him get more done, or just have more impact? I think for a younger me, I would just tell him that everything is going to be okay. I think there's kind of that sense when you're kind of a teenager or earlier that, you're not going to get into the right college, or you're not going to get the perfect job, or you're not going to find the right mate, or all of these kind of crazy things, right? And I think for me, the last I think every year has always been better than the last. I've always had these amazing challenges that I've been able to tackle, and in some cases really have some success with. And so for me, I think the most important thing was just to kind of be comfortable with the path that we're going on, and just things will always turn out well. And so I think one of the nice things that I always do is, looking back, I can always say, with 100% of situations, I'd never change what happened to me, whether it seemed good or bad at the time, because it led to what I'm doing now, which I just absolutely love. That's awesome. And the kind of example you give or gave of colleges or first jobs and all that, it's all in perspective, isn't it? You've probably got way bigger, question marks in the air at the moment, which is good and positive if you're doing something disruptive with your company. But they probably seem to be as stressful as what they were then. But then you look back at those decisions, and they're obviously not as important as what you're doing now. And I think putting things in perspective is a good one for listeners. And I think just keep moving forward, right? There's just so many exciting things that can possibly happen in your life. And if you get stuck worrying about the little issues now, I think you never get to see the big stuff. Yeah, man. Great advice. Well, Neil, where can we find more about LabDoor, and if you've got any other projects or websites yourself? Sure. So LabDoor is available at labdoor.com. And then also we have native apps on iOS and Android. So just search LabDoor supplements and you'll find us in those app stores. We're also working on 2 new projects. I mentioned LabDoor 1, so labdoor.com/1, where you'd be able to go in and get a customized box that would have the number one branded supplements in each category, and that they would come to you each month. And if ever there was a better product than the one you were taking, we'd figure out a way to just kind of automatically switch the number 2 product out and get you the number 1. And then our last thing we're working on is what we call our LabDoor magazine. So we find a lot of times that people will come to us, do a bunch of research, buy a bunch of supplements, and then not come back for 3 or 6 months. And so what we're working on with our LabDoor magazine is kind of the simpler daily health tips, the other things you can do besides the supplements that we think are healthy for you. So anything from research about dog ownership and how it makes you healthier, to ways to de-stress, ways to get into the flow at work, a lot of the kind of stuff that your audience would really appreciate. And we basically just put it all together into every Sunday morning you'll get an email if you subscribe to our magazine that has some of these articles that basically just go over some of the latest research about health and wellness.
That's awesome. And we'll link to all that in the show notes. So yeah, Neil, I just want to say thanks again for coming on the show, and thanks again for your time today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.